Okay, let's walk right into paraphrasing and summarizing. This is writing exercise number 2, related to Psych 2500, of course. And I want to kind of give you an overview of what summarizing and paraphrasing is, but also to give you some specific tools to help you with paraphrasing. It can be really hard and challenging for folks, so I want to give you some meat about how to do that. So summarizing, if you want to think about it this way, summarizing is when you have a longer passage and you want to give a briefer statement, kind of with those main ideas of the longer passage. Kind of think of like an abstract, right? That is summarizing somebody's complete research project in less than about 250 words. So that's a summary. That's an example of a summary. Whereas paraphrasing is taking something that's more specific and rewording either something written or spoken by somebody else to help you to support your own claim in your own paper, to provide some source evidence to establish your main point. So they're kind of similar, yet different. And generally speaking, a lot of students will be like, well, do I have to paraphrase? Shouldn't I use direct quotes? And one of the biggest adjustments, I think, in coming into a psychology program is trying to reprogram yourself to, rather than use textual evidence, direct quotes from another source. Generally speaking, in APA format and psychology courses, and any course that is more probably social science-y, is going to require you to paraphrase instead. If you think about when you're writing a paper about a piece of literature, let's say you were writing a paper about Great Expectations, well, you might actually want to take word for word to demonstrate a point that you're trying to make in your critique of Great Expectations. That's not true in psychology courses. You'll want to use paraphrasing. It takes a lot of practice. It's not something that you can kind of simply just do. And if you've tried it before, you'll know that. So one of the things I always suggest when you are attempting to paraphrase and you're trying to reword somebody else's ideas, and by the way, paraphrasing is taking the idea and rewording it so that you are still giving, you're using it to support your main idea, but you're still going to give credit. You're still going to use an in-text citation, even if it's an idea. Anyway, when you are reading a source, getting some source evidence, which is different than textual evidence, when you're getting that source evidence, before you start writing, you ought to put that away and kind of restate it in your own words, okay? So paraphrasing does require you to do some pre-writing, some outlining, some revision to make sure that you're paraphrasing sufficiently. To paraphrase insufficiently can get you in a situation of either intentional or unintentional plagiarism. And no matter if it's intentional or not, plagiarism is plagiarism. So be sure that you do some practice with it. Some of the reasons you'll want to paraphrase, again, is to give yourself that supportive evidence. If you have a main point that you want to make in your discussion forum, or even in a literature review, if you were to do one of those, you'll need to integrate another source. It just can't be an opinion paper or your thoughts. You need to find evidence to support your thoughts. Oftentimes we paraphrase to clarify a certain point that we're trying to make, trying to provide some definition to a point that we're trying to claim, or even to summarize some other people's research. You'll need to use paraphrasing to give some background to what research has been done. And in our research forums, you're going to have practice with both doing basic article summaries. You're going to read an article at some point and then summarize in your own words. And this is where you'll be practicing your paraphrasing. So to do paraphrasing, you want to think about a few different things. Number one, from the original source, you should have a change in diction, a change in syntax, and your work should be a substantially different feel from the original text. So let me explain what these three things are. You might already know a little bit about this. But diction is the choice of words and phrases. So from the original source, when you paraphrase, the words and phrases need to be different. So I'm going to give you a second to look at this example to see if you think that the diction has been changed enough to be sufficiently paraphrased. So I'll give you a few minutes to read through both the original language and the paraphrased attempt. Okay, so even if you haven't had a chance to read through it thoroughly, that's okay. You might notice when you compare the two that they're not all that different. Some words have changed, right? You can kind of see where somebody took the original language and maybe did a thesaurus thing where they changed some of the wording here and there. But in general, the choice of words and the phrases that are used, sort of the rhythm of it, hasn't changed all that much. So in this case, it's not good enough. It still sounds too close to the original. And remember, it has to have that substantially different feel, and that the words and phrases need to be changed significantly to be sufficiently paraphrased. In this case, this is close to, if not clear plagiarism. So that kind of gives you an idea of how much you'll need to change in order to paraphrase sufficiently. Okay, and then that second tool in your toolbox is to think about syntax. And this is not so much specific words or phrases or, different ways of saying things. This is the arrangement, how it's ordered, sort of the rhythm of what is being said. So, in this case, you're looking at it from the context of, is it basically the same thread of idea that's happening? Okay, so I'm going to give you a chance to read this again. Obviously, you've read the original language, but to also look at paraphrase attempt 2. So I'll give you a couple minutes just to look at those and compare the two to see if you think the syntax has been changed enough. Of course, you can always pause the video. I'm just kind of treating this as a real live session where I'd be teaching you about this stuff. So in this particular type of syntax, you can probably see that the main idea in each sentence kind of is the same between the second attempt and the first attempt, basically following the same line of thinking. So even though more words have been changed and more phrases have been kind of reorganized a little bit, it's still not good enough. This passage has the same syntax as the original. All right, so you might be getting to feel like, oh, this is more work than I ever thought. Well, it's true. Not only do you have to do the diction, you have to think about how can I rearrange or reorganize the original language to make it my own language, even though I'm sort of expressing their idea. And that's why you still give that in-text citation. By the way, I accidentally added another period here. There's only one that's supposed to be there. Ignore that. And then lastly, the language must have a substantially different feel from the original. And I'll give you a chance to look at this too. And again, what you're looking for is, has the syntax changed and the diction changed? Because that will give you what is the substantially different feel. So I'll give you a second to just read the paraphrased attempt number 3 and compare that to the original language. So you can probably see that it's very different. It's provided not only sort of the main ideas from the original source and reworded it, but it's also provided some clarity in ideas to provide with a more clear expression of what is being said from the original source. So this would be considered sufficiently paraphrased and not close to plagiarism in any way, especially since there's an in-text citation, right? So anytime you are paraphrasing, you need to include that in-text citation. If it's not your own idea, well, it's probably important to include a citation. So I'm going to give you a second just to read this original text, and then we're going to try and attempt here to see if you think it's been paraphrased sufficiently again. So walking is an easy to implement strategy to increase appropriate novel idea generation. When there is a premium on generating new ideas in the workday, it should be beneficial to incorporate walks. This is straight from a real empirical article. This is their direct quote. So in order to include it in your writing, you'd want to paraphrase that. And it's pretty typical. A lot of empirical articles are pretty dense, and some can be difficult to parse out what they're really trying to say. So the question is this a good enough, sufficient enough paraphrase? So I'll give you a second to read that. So the question is the diction changed? Have the words and phrases themselves changed sufficiently? So if you look at and compare the two, well, generally speaking, there's enough changes in the wording, but generally speaking, it probably could be even better in terms of paraphrasing, but I would say the diction is probably okay. Then it comes to syntax. What about the idea order, the word order, the general kind of rhythm of the original piece? And I would say this is way too close. The first sentence in the original piece is about walking is an easy way to create new ideas. So basically the same idea as the first sentence in the paraphrased work. And again, the second idea that comes right on the train with that is the same as the original text. So it's because the order hasn't been changed sufficiently, I would say the syntax has not changed enough. So therefore, it's not a substantially different feel. It could be worked on some more. Would this be considered plagiarism? For some people, yes, it would be. For others, they may not see it as concretely as plagiarism. But it's really on that edge. So let me give you another example. This is the same original text. And let's see what you think about this particular attempt to paraphrase that. By incorporating walks during the workday, employees will produce new and creative ideas. The question is, does it get the idea from the original text? And is the diction and syntax changed substantially? And I would say probably both are true. Yep. But there's no 100% way to do this. There's no one way to paraphrase. You can express things in very different ways. Employees may benefit from walks during the day to develop new ways to think about a work-related project. Does that give you kind of the same feel as the original text? It might be a little bit nuanced. There might be some ideas a little more included, but overall it does. So I'd say the diction has definitely changed. The words, the phrases have changed. The order of the ideas have changed. And so it does give you a substantially different feel. So again, this is partly just practice, figuring out what you can do to figure out how to lock in the idea, and by using your own words. So when a teacher says, put this in your own words, they're not saying, put this in your own ideas. They're saying, paraphrase sufficiently. Put in your own words so it has a different feel, but you still cite that source. Okay, I'll give you one last attempt here. So a little bit longer one again directly from an empirical article. So let's say the paraphrased attempt for this is a long original source. So you're kind of doing a bit of summarizing and paraphrasing here. So compared to adults, adolescents may not understand, reflect upon, or experience gratitude in the same way as adults. Therefore, even though a sense of gratitude may reduce materialism in adults, it may not have the same effect on adolescents. Does this as a goal say the main idea from the original source? I would say yes. Does it have different syntax and diction? I would say both of them changed substantially. And the goal is that in any paraphrasing is that you don't change the main idea a lot, but you just put it in your own words and cite the source. So use these tools to kind of help you with that. In the writing assignment that you'll have, it's a quiz, but it's really an assignment. It's just my way of conveying an assignment to you. You have one attempt, but you can close it and come back to it at any point. It's a combination of true, false, multiple choice questions, but you're going to be practicing paraphrasing. So I'm going to score that. I know it's a bit subjective in a way, but I'm going to score that as best I can on diction, syntax, and substantially different feel, and APA formatted in-text citation. So be sure to include that in your paraphrasing. I'm going to give you, just like we've been doing here, the original source, the reference for that source so you can get the information you need for the in-text citation, and then an opportunity for you to practice paraphrasing. You're also going to be practicing paraphrasing, like I said, in your research forums. So make sure to keep this in mind when you're doing any paper, any written assignment in psychology in particular, but when APA citation style is involved, this is great strategies to help you develop that skill. Let me know if you have any questions, and take good care.